say in this class we'll show you how to transform your 2D vector into real 3D scene. What data we can import from vector, how we can create pure 3D objects based on your vector composition, how to transfer colors, how to set lighting, how to render, what post effects we can use on screen. You see the base sketch, the vector, illustration, and final result. If you like, let's explore the techniques. Before we start in 3D, I'll show you the basic sketch I've made on paper. I'm not good at illustrating, so just basic forms, spheres, clouds, cell phone, clocks, some plants. And then I go to vectorize it and made every shape in separate layer. Then I rearrange it, or maybe we can create like this one, then go in table, spheres, plant, clock, and duck. I select plant, duck, and spheres and table, and maybe can we just select all of them, maybe move it a bit to the side, and I have a cursor. I will create it in Cinema 4D directly. There's very simple gamma, and I select this design element and drop it into Cinema 4D. In Cinema 4D, I can input via CV ArtSmart plugin. This is free for Cinema 4D users at Cineversity. Or in release 25, we have integrated support of vector files. So when I drag and drop Adobe Illustrator input, we have some presets, but I keep everything as default. And here is my shapes. I can extrude, offset layers, and it's already a 3D space, 3D scene. But I would like to create more professional looking stuff. And I'll start with adding true 3D elements to it. For example, like a cursor. How we can create a cursor? We can go to use cone, cylinder, arrange it, think like this. And we have, let me enable it. We have something like cursor, but I don't like it to be so big. I create a null object, put our elements there, cursor, and I change the scale in the axis just to create more flattened look. I can play with radius, not to have so much big and huge tail. Going to caps and add some fillets to have more smooth shape here. The same for cone. We have top and bottom. I think bottom is what we need. Add some extra details. Going to object, and you see we have not much polygon segments. Going to rotation segments and set maybe to 32 or even 46. And our base for cursor is ready. Going to enable our design element, go into cursor, put it like on sketch, holding T for scaling, holding R for rotation, and it should be something here, maybe shrink down, to point to our document. Of course, we need to properly rearrange it and create something like maybe a color custom. It should be like black. And I think we have to go here, custom, something like dark. Or we can pick from clock. So our preparation is ready, maybe 0.5. And now we have to create pure 3D elements and replace our flat extrudes with proper primitives and shapes. If you don't use Cinema 4D R25, I remember that there is ArtSmart, and here we have CV ArtSmart object. So it's the same logic. So if I load my AI file, you see that we have almost the same result. If we hit C, we get extrusion. And if we hit C on our integrate vector input, we have the same extrude. So you need to use ArtSmart or latest Cinema 4D for faster vector input. Now we have to parent cursor to design AI, and I have a drop to floor plugin. So it arrange our object directly on the floor. You can manually do it with hand, but I prefer to use this very handy plugin. I unparented, and now we need to create pure 3D elements from these flattened objects. I duplicate with holding Control, Design AI, creating not used folder. We can go and maybe set icon. And for example, I use this one, not use, drop it there and hide it. So I will keep the base procedural element, and this one I hit C to convert it to this stack of our object. The great thing is that in Adobe Illustrator we made layers with naming, so we don't have any problems with finding what group is for what. I keep clock, Control C, Control N, Control V. This is my workflow. I'd like to work in separate scene because this is a very fast and intuitive way to do it. So we're just working with our elements, maybe manage few stuff. I create outline, add extra depth. So I use this slider to offset these outer elements. For example, I can make it average offset. In extrude we have 7. I create 10 and made a little offset just to have this border of our clocks. Then I go into caps and add some smoothness on them. You see that we immediately have this bevel edge. Maybe one should be okay. Add some segments to have smooth here. And the same I can do with these 4 elements. Just adding a little bit of extrude, maybe 0.5, and add some segments. We have rough edges, so I'm going to front view, going to select these 4 splines. You see that moving tool is selected, so I can pick and check what objects are selected. Going to point mode, Control A, right click, and here we have chamfer. So I create a little bit corner, going back to model. Now we have this more elegant and smooth object. Then we can decrease extrusion and arrange it as for selection and move it directly above in front of our blue zone. So it's like popping out. Disabling this black one, spline black, select this 4, and holding Alt, I move my object directly in front of our watch face. Now we have arrow and the same logic, going to points, select these two, holding T, and on this triangle, I shrink down it. Then holding Ctrl A, right click, and we have these chamfer tools. Or you can select it here. Zoom in, adding some smoothness, going to the model mode. Spline arrow, decreasing extrusion, maybe a bit. We have 2 here, maybe 3 for arrow, and rearrange it in front. I'm holding Alt for moving with decimals. And now we get this huge arrow. And I create, if we're going to see the side view, a little gap here that we don't have with our time markers. Okay, now our clocks is really 3D. We have not only flatten objects, but rearrange it in 3D space. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and I replace my clock with new geometry. Now we have this dock. Of course, I save this thing. I close all our another open objects. Going to dock, Ctrl C, Ctrl N, Ctrl V. And now we have these lines. I select them, move it to be sure that everything is selected. OK. Move it to the top, adding caps, little offset, maybe 2, and move it in front of our document. I think 2 should be too much. Offset 1, and we offset to -1.4, adding some subdivision into caps. Oh, not here. Caps to have smoother elements here. Now we see that we have some problems because they rearranged with different offset. Going to side view, and I can manually arrange it with holding Alt to our document. 1, 2, what we get here, holding Alt, 1 more, ready to go, and these 2 1 with different offsets, holding Alt, arrange it, holding Alt, arrange it, and last one, arrange it. Now we have V. I would like to go into point mode, Control A by selecting the spline V, or even V. Control A, we have this chamfer, and I would like to smooth edges. Going to model, select caps, adding extrude, maybe 2, adding segments, and put our V in front of our document shape. Pretty close, maybe like this one. Then select base shape. This is doc shape, and just adding some caps. 2, maybe 1, and a few more segments. Okay, this is done. Control X, Control V to close this document, and Control V. We replace our doc. So we can make some markers, 3D clock, 3D doc, and now we can hide it with holding Alt and left click. We have 3D cursor, and now we have some shapes that we have to replace with pure 3D and not playing with extrusion parameters only. Now we have to create a real 3D elements, and I can start from the bottom of our group, Cloud 1 and Cloud 2. How we can create? We can use, of course, just this extrusion, but we can Control C, Control N, Control V, going to front view, and create some spheres that match our shape. 64. Go in here. I think they're matching perfectly. Yes, like this. Go in here. And yes, we have these 3 shapes that are perfectly matched. Now we can play, for example, with scale, or we can keep it like this. I create volume builder and one more element. This is the cutting block will be at the bottom. 100, 1200, 500, and arrange it to the floor. And huge amount in Z. Volume builder, we can drop all our spheres and cube. Going to volume builder and on cube we set subtract. So here our shape. Then we have to create volume measure and put our volume builder there. We can hide our cloud. Yes, we have our shape. We go into builder and add SDF smooth. Pretty good. And I don't want to have this huge extrude in Z, so I'm going to our measure, going to scale and set to 0.2 in Z, or maybe 0.35. So yes, pretty organic. And B for checking the wireframe. I will go and decrease voxel size maybe 5, going to SDF smooth, and maybe going to another algorithm. I just need very smooth edge. Going to Gaussian and extrude interpolation to 2. Yes, Cloud 1 is ready. Going to put it here. Disabling extrusion, disabling spline. Control C, Control W, Control V. So one cloud is ready. So we can delete this one. The same logic is for the second cloud. Control C, Control N, Control V. Now I'm going to spline we have this offset, and after we're creating a new shape, we can create new null, put our cloud there, delete this cloud small, going to spline, and we can arrange it to 0 point because we don't need this offset. The same steps, sphere 64, match it to our big one, like this, and like this. I'm holding Control and just moving elements, so you can use Control-C, Control-V workflow. Now we have cutter, 1000, too much, and 400. Putting to the bottom, create volume builder, volume mesher, put builder in the mesher, arrange all elements so cube should be subtract, adding SDF smooth, and 2 iteration here, and decreasing voxel size to 5. We go into volume mesher, 0.35 into the scale, or we can create even narrow object, 0.25. Going to cloud small, disabling, and we have this new shape. Also, we can play with the color. So copy, paste, Control X, Control W, and Control V. Now we have this new cloud. So we don't need previous one. And cloud big, let's name it cloud big. And the same trick with color, copy, mesher, custom or automatic, paste. And now we have our beautiful shapes. We can drop it here, and they are ready. Phone, Control-C, Control-N, Control-V. And this is pretty simple, and I think it's almost ready for our work. But I would like to create more smooth and organic look. So with bump, if we check the side view, flatten surface. So we're going to select our screen, adding caps, and of course some bevel, maybe 1. We have shape depth, and we have this spline of our case. Can disable it, and we have this fake camera. Now we're going to our spline screen. Let me keep only screen here. Going to create a cutoff by our camera. We're going to drop our spline outside this camera. So spline camera, duplicate. And now I selecting this spline screen, going to, by holding Alt, to instrument called spline mask. We have to find it. And in UCinema, if you forget where can it be, so maybe here, like this. But you remember the name of the tool, you can use Shift-C and just type spline mask. It's creating something outside, doesn't matter for us. We have camera, screen, and A subtract B. And we have our base camera and cutting from main screen. One more very proper way to do it and to check if you have some problems. So in spline mask, we have some problems if we can have some problems if our splines are outside each other, so they don't align. Now it works fine, and I'm really surprised with it. Let me play, and you see that we have some problems. Why it's work properly? Because it's almost near, but we're using Alt and arrange our geometry perfectly. Extrude, perfect cutout. We have this small shape inside. Going to the front view. So we have our camera here. We can create some maybe caps. One. And our camera is perfectly inside our cutout. So we have case. In case we add some beveling, maybe 3 just huge edges, decrease offset, and put it beside the screen. Control X, closing this scene. Control V, put here. So in comparison, 3D phone and our previous one, you'll see that we have some extra details, some edges for specular lighting, proper offset of our screen, and normal cutout of our camera with additional details. So we can delete this phone too. Now we have to create 3 objects. Let me unhide our design. And this will be really 3D object that we cover in next chapter. I suggest to start with the table because it's the base of our shape, and I can go to our asset manager and look for a table. We have some tables and maybe we'll find something we need. Coffee table. No, we don't have proper geometry. Let me check plant. And now we get, I think this one should be okay to replace our green element. Upscale it, range it, almost the same. We can go to this pot and maybe disabling our texturing like this, going here and leaves. Pretty good. Now we're going to, this is our plant 3D. We're going here, delete this plant, and we have to work with our table. How we can create table? It's very simple. We create our new cube, table, cube, arrange it, decrease scale, so it's match our extrusion look and position. We'll play with width. Okay, almost perfect. And now I'm going to holding Alt G to move it to the null and put it into the start of our scene. Then I create one cylinder like legs, holding Alt and going to cloner and decrease to 2x2. Now we can play with our markers, going to drop to floor. You see it's too much. We can decrease maybe radius to 5 and height to 180. Drop to floor our cloner even lower. We need to set it maybe 170, 170, 180. Cloner, drop to floor, and we have our legs for our table. Going to change name table, go into cube, go into enable field, decrease radius to 1, and now we have our table shape with cloner legs. Now we go into table, go into spline, chord, basic, copy color, set to automatic, paste, object transform color, paste. Now we have plant already on our table. We can hide our table or even delete it. And 3 spheres. Create sphere, arrange it, adding segments, 64, one more small sphere, and one big one. Something like this. Now we're selecting all these 3 spheres. Oh, I occasionally move it and not copy. Control C, Control V. Move it here, arrange it. Now I select all of them, going to drop to floor. So they perfectly aligned. Now we're going to up them up. Up them to the level of our table. And rearrange our objects here. Oh, 3D plant and spheres, because we move our table in a different position. One sphere to the front, one at the back, one into front. So we need place here for our document, like this. Don't forget that we have spheres with different colors, and we're going to match our 3D objects with same color gamma. Selecting spline, Control C, selecting sphere, automatic custom, paste. And now we have 3 spheres, 3D spheres, 3D table. Okay, we can delete it, unhide all our elements, and now they're arranged not properly. And we have to build our composition and prepare it for lighting and shading. Let me delete these empty things. We can put our elements from this folder, uncheck cursor, and now we have to build our composition for rendering. I suggest to start with hiding all elements, holding Alt, and we have table, and I put 3D plant there. This would be our, unhide it of course, our main element, and I like so it placed directly in the center of the scene. That's great, because when we create new any object, they will be directly near with our objects. Now I can unhide doc file. You see it really offset it from our center. So I move it to the center. I create new null, rename it 3D doc, put it here, selecting model, and we have delete this 3D doc, did it without children. And now our elements have anchor point directly in the center of our scene. Also, I would like to move our anchor point directly to the center of our dock. Going to enable axis, going to the front view, and arrange it, I think, somewhere here. Disabling. Arrange our spheres so they don't cross our dock file. Pretty good. Move this one in front. Okay. We have some plot here. I think we have some shaders. And one more thing, if we want to delete all shaders, I put one on the top folder, top group, right click, select identical, select child tags of the same type. We have multiple values of selected tags, 2 elements, and I hit delete. So no materials for this element. 3D table is ready. Going to 3D clock, going to front view. It should be like here. So I changed the composition with small tweaks, put it in front of our document. Now what we have here, 3D phone, put it below our objects, going to axis and arrange it more closely to the center of extrusion. Yes, phone, good. Small cloud, move it in front of our cell phone, but in the back of our table. Phone could be arranged, and big cloud at the far behind. So now we have our composition in 3D. Let me unhide our design AI, layer offset to 1, and you see that, of course, we made some arrangements and move our object to the side, but overall it's almost the same composition that we made. And now we have to create some shading. Before I create a group holding 3D geometry, put all our elements there, and I need to create a huge plane with bending it at the back. So 90 degrees, rotate 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and child it to the plane. Going to the back, adding segments not in width but in height to have this smooth bending thing. Arrange it, extend our bend to have very smooth deforming of our shape. And of course, we need to create camera. Going from the camera view, set to maybe portrait lens, going to 0, 0, 0, 0, and frame our shot. How we can do it? We're going to composition, use grids, and frame it as we want. I can now move our cloud to the side, but be sure you're selecting cloud null object and not volume object. To move whole group, big going to the left, we have cursor going to wrong way, arrange it here. We have our 3D plant holding T maybe shrink down it, move camera like this, moving our dock maybe to the side, or we can extend our sphere and go into the front view and up it so it not cross our table. We have these table lines almost not visible because they are color the same as our viewport, but I think should work fine. So matching our composition like this, maybe here 3D dock could be arranged a little bit left, cloud small, like a little bigger, just not to create this lines intersection. Plant move to the side, make it a little bit smaller, not to have the same size of the sphere. And I think our composition is ready. And now we can start to build our lighting and materials. Now we have to build our lighting, and for this task I'm using Redshift. You can use Octane or any other render engines because the logic is almost the same. I dock this to the side, hit play. Also, I'm using just default settings of Redshift, production, medium, global illumination. So all settings are already set. If you're using Octane, you can use path tracing for following this method. Create area light, and I hide illumination value and put it at the top. Illumination. Now I'm going to hidden line just to not be affected by this illumination and shading things. I up our lighting in scale, decrease intensity maybe to 5, just very smooth one. Going to the front view, move it to the top, so it's like softbox, and move it slide in front, just to have this shading going from the one side. Also, I create one more area light. So this would be top, this would be back, and I put this light directly into the back of our composition. So with lighting only background. You see that like this. Maybe decreasing strength maybe to 5 or maybe to 10. We'll keep these settings for now. And 2 more lights, huge lights, to create soft shading to the left. This would be our left light. You see we get immediately speculars and this shiny look. Going to intensity decrease to 10 or maybe to 15. Move it to the top, maybe a little bit closer, but when we're moving closer we see this shading line. We move it to the left, increase intensity maybe 30. Good looking. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, rotate. This should be our right light. Move it to the side. And one more thing I want to tell you, that these lights should have different intensity to keep not same lighting from the side. Maybe left, maybe 20, right, maybe to 5, and move it to the back. So we keep all our elements here, not vanished with this extra exposure. So basically everything is ready. Going to materials, we have some materials here, edit, delete unused materials, and now we have to create our Redshift materials for these elements. Let's start from the background. Basic, BG, and drop it to the plane. Double click, material, edit shader graph. I use old version, edit, reference, renderer, Redshift, use node materials for presets unchecked, because this one is more compact and it's easier for me to work with it because it doesn't contain these shader balls. We have the final look of our material, our shader. So I pick something maybe like bluish, extend roughness, and maybe play with color. So now it's very saturated. I would like to have, or maybe deep one, to have contrast here. Or we can go into another way. We create very subtle background coloring and decrease reflection strength, because now we have a lot of speculars and I don't want to have them. So if I set value to 0, we see that a lot of lights are affecting with specular lighting at our background. Of course, we can go to project and put our plane there and exclude it from maybe specular or lighting, but I would like to keep very simple material like this, and we can watch how we can manage it. But maybe we can exclude all our background from left and right, but we can keep the top light affecting our background and of course our back. Let me check. If we select our top light and exclude our plane, we have very dark lighting. So this one should be okay. I would like to keep saturated. And maybe we can find some colors. You can create warm gamma, but I keep with cold one. Okay, composition is ready, background is ready, and now we can check one more thing. We can create a material that will take colors of our geometry. So I add to our geo. We lost all our coloring, but get this beautiful reflection. We can add roughness and it start to look very cartoony and smooth. We can use color user data, and here we can have and find object color. Connect our node to diffuse color, and now we get our colors that we get from Adobe Illustrator, and now we can use its data to drive the overview of our shapes. Going to material, we can play with strength of our reflection and immediately get the new look. So check, if I disable our materials and enabling, we have this beautiful reflection. I can going more into the front of our composition. I dislike pure black colors of our cursor and V letter. Going to our folder with Geo, going to basic, going to color and up it and make it brighter. You see, we immediately have the response of our render view, like this one, selecting V, maybe add some coloring to it. It's okay. Now we have some problems with our sphere. It's like not pushing or contacting our table. I know we made it perfectly, but I would like to move it a little bit below. Yes, intersecting. So our composition is ready. I would like to take our clock shapes. Let me select all of them. They have offset of our axis center. So I go into clock, select axis center, going to the front view, move it almost in the center, going to the top view and match the z-axis with center of our shape. And now after this manipulation, we can play with scale and maybe rearrange it like here. Now we can select our clouds, going to drop to floor, make sure it contacting our floor, yes, and playing with the angle, maybe top, maybe bottom. I think this one looks more interesting because now we see the depth of our table. Holding dock, upscale it, move it to the side, checking so it not intersect with our spheres, selecting our cell phone, extend it, drop to floor, maybe like this, move it to the side, just to not have this hole here. We have perfectly centered our composition. We can try to move it to the side. Looks interesting. Looks pretty interesting. I think we can go back, but maybe a bit to the side. Like, no, let's keep the original composition as in our Adobe Illustrator project file. What we can do more, we can create one more material. For example, it would be silver, and apply it to our table legs to bring more realistic material. Selecting, going to the face, maybe roughness, and it can look very good. But let me check plastic. So legs, this is geo, increase roughness, and playing with color to find black one. Not good. Gray look pretty much the way I like it. Then we're going to our table, main table, cube, and maybe make it more brighter. Maybe adding even color to it, because it can add this vibrant eye catcher. Maybe a little bit tinting to blue and a bit darker. Yes, moving cursor to the side, arrange one more to have same distance at the left and at the front, at the left and at the right of our clouds. Let's move it, cloud small, and pretty much it. I think we can tweak some more things in next chapter. Final tweaks. What we can get out of our render is going to Redshift camera, and we can try to add some bloom effect I can override, enable, and if I set it to very low value, we see immediately this beautiful glow. In Octane, we have the same bloom. And now I can add some elements to glow. Also, we can go into object and pick the distance to our document and try to go to bokeh, enable, set to focus distance, and set very huge value, 50, 50. And now we get some blurriness. If you want, you can edit, maybe huge one, or maybe very subtle. Or you can disable it. We didn't set our material to our plant. So we're going to plant. We have some objects here, selecting pot, going to material, going to custom, and set something like maybe dark orange, maybe brown, or bright one. Then we have plant, basic, custom, and something green, but not so vibrant. Very subtle effect. And maybe we can go to our pot and pick the color from our scene already to match our gamma and not to pop up from it. Maybe dark blue. Okay, I can hide soil. Maybe plastic pot. Oh, we have two pots here. So I can copy plastic pot, automatic, paste, and we don't have this edge. Let me go in to the front. This one plastic pot. We have different objects here. We can hide it. Going to soil and set to something dark. Going back to our camera view. I dislike this white zone, so I going to our phone, to our screen, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-N, Ctrl-V, disabling rendering, and would like to create something like fake document editing, maybe like this, going here, decrease height, create one more height, maybe more narrow, like this one and this one. We have for shapes, we can select them, Alt G, holding Alt and going to extrude. And in extrude, we have this hierarchical option. Too much extrude, 10, of course, add something like caps, segments, and as we have the rectangle, we can go to rounding and smooth corners, playing with radius. 1, playing with basic color, custom, for example, light gray. This would be extrude lines. Control X, Control W, Control V, put it to our phone and arrange our lines directly to the screen. You see that it covers our cloud, match it, but as it at the back of our geometry, we didn't see intersection. So hit play, and now our screen is not so empty. We can play with scale by selecting extrude lines, move it maybe to the bottom, like this. Maybe decrease the extrusion to 5 if it's very, maybe even to 1. Narrow it to the screen and set very, very subtle difference from our base shape. Maybe I can pick this one, this light blue color, almost white. Let me go into our case, up our color not to have dark one. You see this outline, a little bit brighter. Going to clock and select all these black elements, just up a bit. Our arrow could be more, oh, not this side, but arrow, maybe more vibrant. Spline back, going to create a little bit closer to gray. These 4 splines, up color maybe to white, or we can play with our colors of the scene. So maybe blue, maybe dark blue, or maybe the same reddish gamma. I'll keep gray. This is the workflow. Of course, you can render it by going to Redshift, output, putting your format. We don't need multipass image, and just hit render with basic settings. They will produce pretty clean result. And if you have a RTX card, you can check hardware ray tracing, and sometimes it produces very good speed up. We have some warnings, but we get our image ready. We see colors blown out, but then we have color conversion, color management, and our composition is ready. And let me load our base images that we get to summary what we was at the start and what our end result. We made a rough sketch, then we create a vectorized shape for our composition, and then we transfer it to a 3D models with replacing some of shapes with real 3D elements. Some were using vector data. This is the result. This one to this one, and final. Hope you like the result of this class, and this workflow will allow you to bring new methods and techniques in your workflow and help you to improve your skills. Thank you for your attention and have a nice day.